When we're designing homes, I think it's critical for us to understand the region that we're building in. We're typically looking for a life in the tropics. And when you're catering to a lifestyle in the tropics, you're catering to spaces which are in that sense in the threshold spaces, spaces which are neither inside, neither they're outside. They're the connecting spaces. And that's where the life happens. That's where the memories are created. And it's very important that in tropical living, those spaces are captured. My name is Shobhan Kothari. I'm a partner at AD&D and KD&D Studio LLP. We're an architectural and interior bespoke design firm working out of Mumbai. So at the studio, when clients approach us, they come to us with a very tangible brief. But designing is not always about the tangibles. It's about capturing the intangibles. When we speak of the intangibles, we are actually talking about the experiences. We live in a world which is full of hyper reality. And as a bespoke luxury studio, our job is to tailor this consciousness. When you're picking a site which is in a second home, which is away from the city life, the experiences to get to there are equally important as the experiences that you cater when you're giving a house to the client at the site itself. Let's take, for example, this particular project that we're talking of, which is at Aamby Valley. The experience of driving all the way from Bombay to Aamby Valley is through the Western Ghats, seeing the rain, the waterfalls, enjoying the vada pav on the way. These are all experiences which eventually are impressed into your memory. So by the time you kind of arrive at your destination, those are now kind of getting accumulated, and you have to create for these moments to be kind of breathed. And I think architecture is about, hence we believe that the architecture is all about capturing the intangibles with the tangibles. So the site is located in Aamby Valley. If you're familiar with the terrain, Aamby Valley is blessed with a man-made lake right in the center. And this lake has hillocks, basically the UNESCO blessed Aravalli Western Ghats, surrounding it on all four sides. The properties are kind of given off as the north, south, east, west facing the lake. We were on the north property facing the south, and that also posed as a challenge in itself. Typically, when you look at the terrain, the approach to it was a parcel of land no more than half an acre, because half an acre was kind of eaten away in a complete slope. But there was a massive drop of about 60 meters, and then you had the lake that was happening at the bottom. And all along, every time that we went to the site, we kind of realized that if we landed up siting the building above ground, the visuals that we were getting were completely getting blocked. Not only that, but it looked as if the building belonged in any urban environment. It did not have a siting for that space. So we then took a conscious call and said that, is there a possibility that the earth plane shifts down, and we literally carve out the land and get closer to the lake at the bottom, right here. And by doing that, we were able to kind of suppress one story from the road level below the ground and just stick out one story above the road level. So as a result, the approach made it more humane to experience the structure. Also, by doing that, we got a little bit more closer to the views and the sighting. What was very interesting in this particular project was the fact that the site, even though that the client had purchased as much as an acre, we had only half an acre that could be utilized. The other additional half an acre was a complete steep terrain. And that for us was a challenge. So what we landed up doing is to realize that once we had kind of decided that we wanted to site the building at the lower level, we had to come up with a plan of how do we kind of carve the ramp going all the way down. Because this drop that we speak of going down, was almost 4 meters. And this was important for us to understand this, that because of this 4-meter drop, the ramp became extremely steep to come to the final, what we would like to call as the arrival plaza out here. Now, this was the first shift that we landed up doing. That's the shift in the plane. But critically, what we also realized is, in this building, that's the south. We were actually looking at all the environmental hazards becoming a huge issue for us. With the building placed right at the bottom and facing the entire fury of the southwest winds in terms of rain, and also the sun, it moved its path from east to west. The entire south face was now going to take a tremendous amount of beating. So how are we going to kind of compensate for that? And that began the exercise of the second shift. So what we landed up doing is the first mass, which was located on the lower level, the upper level saw the building move more towards the south, and it moved more towards the east. By virtue of creating that, we landed up getting these overhangs in plan, and these overhangs became the necessary protection for our structure from the rains and from the sun. What we landed up doing is to create these brise soleils, or what we like to call as the jalis and the screens. This was critical because it was not only providing protection from the weather, but at the same time, the 2 balconies that existed at the upper level, they got its view, which was uninterrupted, but at the same time, they were shielded from the weather. And this was very important for us. What the shift also gave us, and this was exciting for us, is it created these light wells. These light wells became the green pockets for the master bathroom as well as for the kitchen at the lower level. The first shift of taking the volume 4 meters down and also shifting the upper block of the displacement of the lower block. I think these 2 shifts gave us the intention of the concept of the house, which is why we called the house and coined it the shift house. When designing luxury spaces, it's almost secondary in nature to designing it like a hospitality project. It's very important to understand that the served spaces and the service spaces have a defined threshold, and the overlap between the two should be kept to a minimum. For us, all of that includes the living room, the dining, the bedroom spaces, your lounge, everything which is where the family is going to be entertained. The service spaces at the other end are your utilities, or for that matter, the servants and the staff quarters. Now, once you've identified how the served spaces and the service spaces are going to interact, and we call this exercise adjacencies, right? And it's very important for us to kind of get this right, because this begins our exercise for design. So what typically began as an exercise of first lowering the structure down, we realized that we had three distinct areas that were created at the lower volume. We had the master bedroom, we had the living dining, and we had what we would like to call as the staff and utilities. So this got defined by a small gesture entrance, whereas this had a rather appropriate gesture that was created once one came down from the ramp. And you know, the canopy kind of gets integrated into this entrance to further accentuate what is the main entrance of the house. Again, to highlight, you know, living in the tropics is all about creating those thresholds. So this was our first threshold. This is where you kind of come down the ramp and you have what we like to call as a pause moment. The second pause moment that one is able to experience is the entire deck that runs the length of the lower block. This is your second threshold. This is where life happens in the tropics. You're able to come out from the master bedroom, you're able to come out from the living dining. The staff quarters turns its back, but we were able to create an outdoor dining out here, and attached to this was our pool. You had the lawn, which seamlessly kind of allowed you from this threshold to be accessed, and all of this faced the lake beyond and had the vistas of the mountains that were there. The way the upper block works is that there is an overlap that happens with the lower volume, and this overlap is critical. This overlap takes care of the staircase that takes you at the upper level. And what we have done here is that the entire south side, there is a balcony, as well as on the north side, there is a veranda. Now, this is important because the veranda on the north side allows you to enter the functions at the upper level, which is typically 4 bedrooms. Each of these bedrooms has a balcony access from where they can enjoy the vistas. But at the same time, if they want to be enjoying each other's company, this balcony is their space where they can congregate. At the studio, I think we're very conscious of the fact that, you know, we want to show restraint when selecting our materials. We also want to make sure that the architecture is honest. So if you look at the shift house, the lower volume is built in concrete, and the same concrete is an experience that you not only experience from the outside, but you also experience it from the inside. So it's a little bit of a seamless experience that one gets. The upper volume is actually built in stone. So this is a forest green, river washed cladding that we'll put onto that other volume. Now, the purpose for choosing this volume, this particular material, was also where we are siting it and where we are building it. You know, it's built in an environment which is flushed with vegetation and green. We wanted the structure to, in fact, camouflage with the surrounding. So besides the use of concrete for the lower mass and the forest green for the upper block, one notices that there is a use of this bamboo wood which has been used in accents for the brise soleil screen. It's also been used for the pergolas and the drop-off canopy that happens at the entrance. Another interesting use of river washed material was the river washed grey granite. You see it in strips being used all along the ramp and also on the decking. It's been used in these 2-inch strips strategically because we wanted to kind of again further reinforce the length of the building. So the idea was to kind of put it parallel to it, and you can see that being utilized. We've used micro concreting throughout the lower floor for the entire public living spaces as well as the dining spaces. But the minute one comes to the master bedroom, there's a use of marble. The upper bedrooms, the flooring that we've used is all wooden flooring. And then once again, there's a very much strong control on the material palette for the bathrooms of the upper level, where we've used just this black river washed kadappa on the floor and a travertine, silver grey travertine for its walls. Overall, I think that there has been a constraint or rather a restraint that we have purposefully shown in our selection towards the materials that we have used. At the studio, as an architectural practice, for us, interiors is about treating it like interior architecture. It's more about creating what we would like to call as an understated elegance in terms of the placement of the furniture, its mood, its tones and colors, which in that sense complements the architecture and makes the whole experience extremely seamless. The landscape at the studio is to make sure that architecture is subservient to nature and not the other way around. We are consciously making efforts where the built form eventually camouflages in its surrounding, and the entire vegetation and the landscape takes over. So the way the trees get placed or the way the landscape is kind of designed is to make sure that in its full bloom, eventually the structure is completely dissolved in its surrounding. And for us, that's very, very important.